Welcome to Dignified Menstruation, Technology Matters. Presenting Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation, AIDS Healthcare Foundation, AHF, and we have Radha Paudel Foundation as representation. Welcome, everyone. Please get comfortable. Please grab some water. Please be comfortable so we can engage in a lively discussion and to continue to understand about dignified menstruation and focusing on technology matters. Next. So today, I will be your moderator. My name is Millie Adhikari. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a public health practitioner and director for Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation North America chapter. Then we have Radha Paudel, founder and secretariat for Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation. She is an anesthetic nurse, an author, and again, a founder of Dignified Menstruation and GSCDM. We have Serene Davidini, an associate director of global creative design from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. We're so lucky to have her today and speak about dignified menstruation and the work that AHF has done. Next, we have Sapna Paudel, an admin and finance officer of Radha Paudel Foundation. She is an incredible asset, and we're so excited to have her here today. And a little bit about the session. This will be a session exploring the intricacies of dignified menstruation, as well as the use of technology in the wake of dignified menstruation and menstrual equity. Next. And next, our question is to the audience, and that is, we would love to know about when and how did you first find out about menstruation? What does it mean? Who gets it? What happens? Who told you? What did you observe? We would also love to know, how did you feel when you find out about menstruation? Did you feel good, bad, dirty, ashamed, proud, scared? Please type in your responses in the chat, and we will be discussing them further in the session. So to start us off today, we have Sapna.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Millie. Hello, everyone. It's me, Sapna Paudel from Nepal. I'm currently associated with Radha Paudel Foundation and Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation. Apart from this, I am a student doing a master's degree in gender studies. Can you just go to the previous slide, please? Yeah, thank you. Here, today, I will be sharing about the experience that we had during the COVID time. Technology has tied up with the dignified menstruation. Yeah, just this slide, please. Alike with the other countries, Nepal was also facing a tough situation due to COVID-19 pandemic, as Nepal government has imposed travel restriction, limited their emergency response. Existing but unfamiliar platform we were getting popular in those days, which require mandatory internet connection. However, in Nepal, such connectivity is yet to reach across the country, and there was a fear and frustration due to the COVID-19 among, especially among with the youth people. Next slide, please. Yeah. In order to ease the fear and frustration we deriving out of youth, we mapped out the fellowship program on dignified menstruation. The situation caused due to COVID-19 urged the program to address the gender-based violence through the lens of the dignified menstruation. We called an application from across the country. We used the Facebook page, website, emails, with the tools to call an application from all the 7 provinces of Nepal. And as a result, 13 organizations were selected from all the 7 provinces of Nepal, which were led by the women, child clubs, sign language interpreters, disabled coordinations committee, and the campaigner. Yeah, we conducted a 3 days virtual training to the selected organization. Monthly coachings and follow-up were conducted during the fellowship program. That is, we had run the fellowship programs from all 7 for 7 months. As an outcome of the fellowship program, we are continuously running fortnight webinars, which are live on the Facebook page of Dignified Menstruation Campaign Nepal. Similarly, a radio program on dignified menstruation is continuously conducted twice a week. Next, please. Our fellows organizations are marking a national and international days, such as International Dignified Menstruation Days on December 8, International Women's Day on March 8, World AIDS Day on December 1st, International God's Child Day on October 11, and so on. Likewise, other awareness raising programs are also conducted in the continuous basis at school and the colleges. And yes, thank you so much for listening to me, and hope you will enjoy the further presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lal. Let's go ahead and watch the video. Thank you so much, Lal. Our videos, could you play it right there? Yeah, and see if we can get the audio rolling. Okay, I think that technology, as we know, is fickle and sometimes we have a little bit of issue with the audio, but maybe we can have Lal drop in the link to the YouTube video so that you can all watch it in your own webpage with the audio. So we'll just drop the link in the chat box. Apologies for the lack of sound. Let's move forward as we have a limited time in our session today. So please, I invite Radha to go ahead and discuss with us technology in the wake of dignified menstruation.
Namaste, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. I see the 19 participants over here. And first, let me congratulate to all for the 113th International Women's Day. We are discussing about the technology, how the technology accelerate the advocacy on dignified menstruation, but we have already observed that the technology always doesn't allow us to move as we wish. And since the dignified menstruation is a very innovative and holistic approach to address the gender inequality or changing the narratives, changing the landscapes of gender equality all around the globe. And Global South Coalition is a survivor. Previous slide, Lal. Yes. Global South Coalition is a survivor-led global network based in the Global South, and it has a secretariat office based in Nepal. And it is all about the changing the narratives around menstruation from hygiene to dignity and from 5 days bleeding to life cycle approach. That means we need to see how does the menstrual discrimination construct the power and patriarchy, and that perpetuate the different kinds of sexual and gender-based violence throughout the life cycles, from home to tomb, for example, sex-related abortion to gender pay gap. And it is founded in 2019. It is an initiation of Radha Paul Foundation. Earlier, Sapna was highlighted about the activities, which was the national network, Dignified Menstruation Campaign Nepal. And this Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation is a global network, but it is an initiation of the Radha Paul Foundation. And it has a steering committee. This time we have the second tenure of steering committees going on. They represent from Nepal, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Malawi, and USA. You can get the details information in website of Dignified Menstruation, www.dignifiedmenstruation.org. And then we also have the national coordinators. You can, I see the few friends are joining over here as a national coordinator. Next, please. Right now, we have been working all around the globe through the partners, direct intervention, through various kind of activities, particularly in research, advocacy, and training. We have been reaching out more than 56 countries, we see the interest of the NGOs is increasing. Not only the NGOs, the universities and the different platforms, global platforms. Next, please. And here, while we talk about the technology, I like to share this very beautiful symbol. This is the symbol of the Dignified Menstruation, which we created. We means the Global South Coalition. And you can see the shape belongs to the blood drop. And then when you see the linings, horizontal line, longitudinal lines, these lines represented that this is the planet. That means this is our Earth. And then you can see the splashes of the blood, the different colors, and it covers more than half of the planet. That means more than half of the population of this planet have born with the uterus and ovaries. That means they are the menstruators. Girls, women, means trans men, queer. And then the splashes, you can see the different colors. That means it represents the 5 days of the bleeding. And because of this bleeding, this planet, this universe is moving forward since the time of Homo sapiens. And let's rejoice this blood and our existence. And wherever you wanted to talk about the dignified menstruation, we encourage you to use this symbol, and it is available in Google very easily. Thank you. Next, please, Lal. Since 2019, we started the Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation, and then when we started the Radha Paul Foundation, even in 2019, we don't have the information while we hit the dignified menstruation in Google. Right now, in 0.35 seconds, you can see the different kinds of information over the internet. And this is how we can claim that the technology matters for us to amplify our campaign, our strategy, our tool for gender equality. You can define either way. You can define as a tool for achieving gender equality, or dismantling or smashing the patriarchy. Based on your experience and expertise, you can define. But for us, it is a very, very innovative and holistic approach to achieve the gender equality. Next, please. And you can reach us through the different means, the website, YouTube, and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and everywhere we urge you all to talk about the menstrual dignity now, because since the time of Homo sapiens, this universe moving because of this menstruation, and we never ever talk. This is the missing opportunity, and this is the very high time. We urge each of you to mainstream the dignified menstruation into your program. Next, please. And the background is continue. We have been working in a zero funding, and COVID pandemic and Ukraine-Russia war push us down in terms of the funding, but we also take it as an opportunity. We able to reach out the many countries, many friends in both time of the pandemic and the Ukraine-Russian war, to mainstream the dignified menstruation into their relief and support activities, because if we don't incorporate the dignified menstruation since the beginning of the preparation of the disasters and the pandemic or war, we cannot address the priorities and needs of the menstruators. And without menstruators, we cannot believe on the inclusion, because leaving no one behind, we all, everyone talking, but the menstruators, both in systemic and symptomatic approach, we are not addressing them while working. Even the global gender equality and social inclusion policy, or JESI policies, missed to address the menstruators. And while we talk about the Global South Coalition, we always still we experience varieties of resistance from the friends, NGOs, who are working around the human right, women empowerment, even in the menstruation. They are saying, "Oh, you guys are doing great job, nice job." And then when we see when we visit their activities, websites, or attended their activities, and they hesitate to talk about the dignified menstruation. And those who are working around the menstruation, they mostly focus on the product hygiene and the approach mostly in the charity base. They are focusing on the tangible, technical, temporary fixation kind of things. They are not ready to address the systemic discrimination, systemic impact of the menstrual discrimination throughout the life cycle of the menstruators and non-menstruators. And while working on the dignified menstruation, we constantly experiencing different kinds of threats, blaming, exclusion, zero funding, and different kind of. And personally, as a initiator of the dignified menstruation, I face various types of threats, including life-threatening threat, even now. Next. Through the use of the technology, we have been doing the research, and right now you may observe our research for assessing the school's status of dignified menstruation globally. It is floating on Spanish, French, and English language. If you are not joining it, please find it in the social media and the website. And also we keep doing the research and publish, and also present it in different global forums. For example, last year we the 4th International Dignified Menstruation Day celebrated on the theme of dignified menstruation for ending child marriage. This is the evidence-based theme. We review the 100 years, 93 years intervention of child marriage in Bangladesh, India, and Niger, who are the most child marriage, who has the highest rate of the child marriage, and also review the policies, national policies, as well as the international human rights instrument. And then we publish the report, and also we celebrate the International Dignified Menstruation Day. And we also encourage our friends to implement the program by linking with the dignified menstruation and ending child marriage. Next. And likewise, we have been inviting the academia, activists, youth leaders from Global South and Global North simultaneously, and doing the fortnightly webinars for last 3 years. It's because of the technology. Next, please. And we also publishing different kinds of books, and it is easier to connect the people and organizations. And we also contributed the different book chapters, and more are on the way. Next. And we also constantly developing the reading materials around dignified menstruation, because we believe that we are the pioneer organization, and based on our experiences, we are not the perfect. We are learning every day, and we acknowledge the mistakes and failures, and we learn from that, and we constantly preparing the reading materials. Why and how does the menstrual discrimination is impacting on political participation? Why it is a matter of the power and patriarchy? That kind of things we constantly preparing in different ways. Next. And as you all know, we also conducted the 3 days international workshop, which is the landmark in the history of the feminism, development, and human rights. It was 2020. But this is the high time of the COVID, even though we see, you can see the partners, solidarity partners, supporting partners in the background, and this report is available on the website as well. Next. Likewise, in 2021, we organized the international conference on dignified menopause as a human right, that based in Scotland. And we also did the many organizations, I mean the Dignified Menstruation national chapters also organize different kinds of activities, but these are the highlighted in terms of the conference. Next. Likewise, last year we organized especially we organized the 2 conferences. Our Sri Lanka chapter, where the Bilitu led the entire 1-day conference. It was really path-breaking conference. I congratulate to Sri Lanka team here. They really, despite having the political and economical crisis, they did a wonderful job. Next. And we also, along with the AHF, AIDS Healthcare Foundation, who is our partner organization, for marking the 4th International Dignified Menstruation Day, and we did the conference in Nepal as well. It was also the global. We have speakers from Laos, Cambodia, Philippines, Mexico, Sierra Leone, Kenya. It was really wonderful. Next. And we since 2019 we started to mark the International Dignified Menstruation Day for the 8th December. This is the glimpse from the first year. Next. This is the 2nd year. Next. 3rd year. Next. 4th year. And see the beauty of translating and disseminating the information in different languages. Even there is, I think there is a missing the information from French, from Spanish. Yeah, thank you. Next. And now we are here, and since for last 3 years we have been speaking in UNCSW. We don't have money. We cannot go to the New York. We cannot take a photo and post in the social media, but we can constantly contribute for the status of the women from local to global level. Next. And despite all exciting things, so many achievements in a history of feminism, development, and human rights, it is very difficult. We have some lesson learned while working virtually. Sometimes, especially in the global south, problem with the connectivity, power cut, and also some friends expected something like, oh, they wanted to fly over some our countries. They are expecting the funding, blah blah blah. But despite all these challenges, we are still moving, smiling, and moving. And I think we can make the differences in a history of the human right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Radha. I think that was a really good point to end on, is the inequality that can come from the use of technology and the lack of access of technology. And so now I will go ahead and lead us to speak a little bit about what is dignified menstruation, and that we will begin with what is menstrual discrimination. Okay, so menstrual discrimination is really an umbrella term in which we are referring to the taboos, the shame, the stigma, the restrictions, the abuse, the violence, and the deprivation from resources and services that are associated with menstruation throughout the whole life cycle of a menstruator. And we pointedly use the word menstruator because we are inclusive of every single body and person who menstruates. So this could be folks that identify as women, as girls, as trans men, as queer individuals, non-gender binary. And it's really important for us to move away from the idea of feminizing menstruation so that we can be inclusive of every single population and to address the needs. This menstrual discrimination is a form of gender-based violence, of sexual and gender-based violence. Thus, it is a violation of our human rights, and it is a global, universal phenomenon that occurs with different names, different severities, different forms, and different magnitudes, with some which are visible and with others which are invisible and tend to be very, very violent. It's so complex and multifaceted that we often don't know what we're looking at is menstrual discrimination, but a lot of the entities working in sexual and reproductive health and gender-based violence, rape, sexual assault are ultimately trying to work on menstrual discrimination, but there's a missing gap in knowing what that is and what the consequences of that is. Next. So when we think about these global examples, you may immediately think of some big examples in your brain. And this may be due to the media, which has influenced us to think of certain acts as menstrual discrimination. I'm sure we've heard of popularity of not being allowed to be in the home, of not being allowed to be to do religious activities, that we see that in Bangladesh, in Nepal, but we see it globally. We see it in cultures in Ghana. You're not allowed to cross the river or have a communal water source. We see it in Nigeria, in South Sudan, restrictions to bath or to wash. We see in Egypt, forbidden to cook or eat the cassava bread. We see in Bolivia and Argentina, where you're also told to avoid certain foods. We see it in the global north. A lot of it is due to the stigma that exists for menstruators when they go to school. So you see a lot of school activities which are missed. There is a global phenomenon and a universal menstrual discrimination. And again, it just looks different. And the folks who are leading the menstrual agenda, which have been folks from the global north, are the ones who are identifying health and hygiene as the primary problem when we see that doing decades of work has not led us there. Next. So here, let's think about menstrual discrimination from a perspective of human rights and human rights violation, right? Because we're primarily working to understand which of these restrictions result in our inalienable right being taken away. So the silence and ignorance on menstruation, so that means the lack of education, the shame and stigma, which is prevalent in all societies, and the silence, which is very prevalent all across the globe. These are all, as you can see here with this chart, you can see that all of these different sort of restrictions and menstrual discrimination hit all of these different criteria of our human rights: dignity, equality, freedom, non-discrimination, the right to shelter, the right to food, the right to health, the right to education. And often when we only see the visible menstrual stigma, which comes from, deprivation from water sources or food restrictions or mobility, then you see that almost all of these different sectors of human rights violation is happening. And when you have the silence and ignorance on menstruation and the stigma, it hits every single human rights violation. So truly, the lack of dignity and the silence, pervasive silence, and the violence of this silence is impeding on all sectors of our human rights. Next. And like we just said, there are 1,000 different ways to say menstruation, period, aunt flow, menses, choi. We have all these different languages that also have their own special word for menstruation, period, and you see that this sort of euphemism that we use to describe menstruation is actually a form of menstrual discrimination itself. Because why are we afraid to say menstruation? Why is there a stigma to talk about menstruation? Why is it easier for us to be able to speak about period or flow or use these euphemisms, when in reality, the menstruation word just means simply that we are menstruating? There is silence at the home, there is silence in the school, in the workplace, silence in every corner of our society. And it really leads to the fear and ignorance, eventually pushing traders out towards undignified conditions. Next. So here we're taking a look at all of these international United Nations campaigns which have occurred since the beginning of, right here we have 1948 with the International Human Rights Declaration. We are missing menstruation. Do we realize that as folks who work in the sexual and reproductive health spaces? We are missing menstruation and the idea of menstrual discrimination as a human rights violation in all of these international entities and international declaration where we are vowing to protect human rights. However, menstruation or menstrual discrimination is not included as a human right. So let's take a minute to think about what that means and how neglected menstrual discrimination is truly. Next. Even when we have different stakeholders who are working in the menstrual movement, because although the United Nations has not officially acknowledged menstruation as a human rights violation, there are thousands of entities working, NGO workers, educators, activists, politicians, UN agencies, donors in the academia world, policymakers, the media. There's a lot of conversation around menstrual advocacy. And I know you have all heard it too. There's a lot of conversation, but where do you see the conversation around dignity? Where do you see these entities talking about the shame and the stigma? It is much easier for us to distribute pads and products, which is necessary. Pads, products, infrastructure are all necessary. But when do we talk about the shame, the stigma, the thing that keeps us feeling less than, the feeling of powerlessness? When do we talk about that? And when do we address that? Next. And here, Lal, I think you'll have to keep on clicking next. It's a little fancy PowerPoint. There we go. So here we're going to explore a little bit into when we see the global stigma and shame and how it results in affecting. Here on this slide, we have the menstruator. So let's take a look here. Here you have, before 6 to 9 years old, maybe the menstruator has sort of, is feeling safe, is happy, is powerful. Fun fact, but humans who have a uterus and, who have a uterus when they're born, they actually have a higher brain activity wave. And this is research, so you're welcome to look this up and fact check me. But they are known to have a higher brain activity level, which they see actually goes down as we are growing up, and as there is these other factors that come in and social inequities. And I'll start from that is from this menstrual stigma and shame, because you have this person who is active, who is, as curious, as intelligent, as energetic. Then after the menarche happens, which is the first menstruation, you see suddenly that one, menstruators are skipping school. So you see that menstruators are physically not in school in order to gain knowledge. Then you see that menstruators are not speaking up as much as they used to. They're not as active as they used to. There's these feelings of impurity, insecurity, inferiority, powerlessness, and disadvantagedness. So this eventually is leading to more feelings of empoweredness, of insecurity, and really is impacting one's sexual and reproductive health needs. When one is not able to talk about their vagina, when we cannot talk about our breast, when we can't talk about our uteruses, then we do not have the utmost, access to healthcare and to dignity. Because in order to access healthcare, in order to feel empowered, we need to have dignity. Next. Perfect. So here we have that menstrual discrimination is really also at the same time affecting non-menstruators. So in this case, you have that a non-menstruator is one who stays the same. They are born without a uterus and thus do not menstruate. They learn something about menstruation. Then as they grow up in their age, they learn that menstruation, they observe, they see the stigma and the shame. They see that, as menstruators, their sisters or their mothers or their friends in school, that there is a time around the month that they're not, maybe not feeling their best. Maybe they don't come to school. Maybe there's a lot of restrictions around their activities. Maybe they are having to restrict on food or on environment, or that they just are not the same, right? But these non-menstruators do not have to change anything. So they continue to feel powerful, they continue to feel empowered, they continue to feel free. And this continues on eventually what we see is the result of the patriarchy and misogyny and the unequal power imbalance. So menstruation, as we discovered, is really the root of this power imbalance and this power hierarchy which gets created. And menstrual discrimination has a multitude of effects. So here, our systemic impact, it's impacting us throughout our life cycle. Even before one is born, if you are a menstruator, there is gender biases abortions. There's gender selective abortions. There's all these ideas around what it means to have a menstruator versus a non-menstruator. You have the symptomatic impact. You have menstruation, all the things that come leading up to menarche, the fluctuation of hormones. You have menstruation itself, which carries a lot of different health conditions, which can be impactful to the menstruator, but due to the stigma and shame, we often don't talk about these things. Perimenopause, menopause, these are all very important and critical transition times in which menstruators need support, and yet they're not given it. So we see here that the systematic impact of menstruation occurs all through our life cycle, and it impacts essentially everything that we really do. So it's beyond those 5 days. It's beyond the menstrual products. It's beyond your reproductive years. And we are at some point of our menstrual cycle at any point. Next. So as we continuing on the impact of menstrual discrimination, focusing on physical health, we have, and I'll kind of silo into, you can read the slide itself, but I will silo into kind of looking at a different perspective. When COVID-19 first happened, and about, I believe, 75 to 80% of all healthcare workers are people who menstruate, and there was a creation of the PPE, personal protective gear. It was designed so that one does not have to take it off for the 24 hours or whatever their shift is that they are working. We know through research that about 75 to 80% of the healthcare workforce are people who menstruate. So during COVID-19, when all of these folks are out in the forefront of COVID response, they were given PPE gear, which does not allow for one to change their menstrual product or to even think about their menses. And so nurses in China first complained about this, is that they had no way to take care of their menses while wearing PPE that is designed to protect them from COVID-19, especially when we know that 75 to 80% of the world's healthcare workers are people who menstruate. So that's a little example of how we can take a look at how menstruation is so neglected, even in the minds of the medical doctors and directors who came up with PPE. So that's something we really have to think about. How far have we come when we can't even think about menses as a factor in creating PPE gear, and how that led to an adverse event outbreaks of UTIs, of potentially leading to PID. We have extreme, adverse events that occur due to menstrual discrimination in our physical health. We have fibroids, which are benign tumors. We have endometriosis, which are your endometrium of your uterus implanting into different parts of our body. So there's so many conditions which are ignored and neglected simply because of the fact that we neglect menstruation, and thus this theme carries over in all the different sectors of our health. Next. Beyond the physical, we have an enormous impact on our emotional and physiological health. The feelings of happiness and excitement, the perceived anger, stress, depression, it all sort of leads from this idea of being happy and excited about menarche and menses, but really then seeing how the world treats menses, observing how there is that group shame and stigma, and how it translates into this anger, this stress, this depression. I really want to read this quote out. It says, "People might tease me. I started to feel fearful and scared of my seniors and men. I kept thinking I had to do this and not that. I did not sleep well, feel suffocation and restlessness, feel febrile, have no appetite, have no taste for any food, feel dirty, insecure, and have bad dreams for 3 days of my menstruation." We have to really think about what does it do to a young developing person's mind when we tell them that the thing that they are born with, that is a biological phenomenon, is dirty. And that thus, by that analogy, that they are dirty, they're impure, that they have something wrong with them, that they should hide. They should not talk about in public. They should trade menstrual products in their sleeves like other recreational drugs, like they are doing that. So when we think about the impacts of menstrual discrimination, we have to think about how is it impacting menstruators' self-esteem? How is it impacting their mental health, their empowerment? How? Next. Specifically, looking at education, we see that there are a lot of effects of menstrual discrimination on education. And this is really beyond just, one specific region. It's beyond it being in a more low resource setting, because we see through research done here in the United States as well as Canada that there are a large amounts of students who menstruate who are skipping school due to menstruation, not because they don't have menstrual products, although that may be the case for some students in different countries and different regions, but the stress, the distraction, the headache, the premenstrual symptoms, these are all contributing to their decision to go into school or not. The decision to, if you are a young person who cannot afford menstrual products, that's another reason why a lot of menstruators are not going into school. If you're being teased at school, then you're not going into school. Simply, a lot of NGOs and a lot of entities right now working in menstrual health or hygiene, menstrual equity will identify the lack of menstrual products as a reason why they're not going to school, which is true for different settings. However, I want us to recall upon 2014, when in Kenya, the young 14-year-old menstruator, she died from suicide due to the teasing and the shame and the stigma that she experienced in school. And Kenya is one of the regions in Africa which has been long, sort of oversaturated with pads and menstrual products. And that was one of the first areas which, were considered to be well resourced with menstrual products. So we really have to start thinking beyond the products and infrastructure. What is missing and where are the gaps? Next. Perfect. So here, this is just sort of summarizing the points that we spoke about, which is the, realized, ritualized menstrual restrictions, touching, eating, mobility, participation, then the learned restrictions by looking at your other menstruators in your community, in your school. Then you have your main arc, your loss of confidence in yourself, in your body, in your changing body. You have the perceived health issues, the poor educational status. It's really leading to this, it's leading to a violation of your human right in order to be educated, to have safety, to not be discriminated against just due simply to your biological phenomenon. It's leading to feelings of powerless and hopelessness. There's just sort of this idea that I am less than and I am impure and dirty due to the menses and the stigma around menses. Next. Perfect. And I think you'll have to hit the button one more time for this as well. Is it going? I think you'll have to keep hitting it, Lal. Sorry. Yes, there you go. Perfect. So then we go into what is dignified menstruation then, right? Dignified menstruation simply is a state that is free from any forms of menstrual discrimination, including taboo, stigma, shame, abuse, restrictions, and violence that's associated with menstruation throughout the life cycle of the menstruator. And expanding on that, dignified menstruation, we envision a world that is free from any form of abuse, discrimination, and violence associated with menstruation. Every menstruator deserves freedom from the shame and taboo around menses, the removal of all menstrual restrictions, access to sustainable, safe menstrual products, clean water and hygiene, high quality sexual and reproductive health services, and body literacy, so that we can live a dignified life in these beautiful, powerful bodies. And we, the Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation, use this mechanism of dignified menstruation to simply strive to obtain inalienable dignity for every single individual for their entire menstrual cycle. We're a collective international coalition of diverse organizations and individuals from all across the globe uniting to transform the current menstrual movement to center dignity as the mechanism for dismantling the misogynistic, patriarchal, structural, institutional, and interpersonal beliefs and behaviors that discriminate against menstruation. Next. Perfect. So in conclusion, the menstrual movement's narrative needs to change, right? So we see here that we need to change our dialogue into one, simply refuting the fact that menstrual blood is impure, because it is not, right? It is the same blood that we have in every other part of our body. It is a blood that we need, that is nutritious, in order to be able to, sustain a life. It is changing from hygiene to your dignity, 5 days of bleeding to throughout your life cycle, and really from a menstruator issue to everybody's issue, and thus everybody's responsibility. Next. And it is, like we said earlier, it is a holistic approach that addresses all forms of discrimination associated with menstruation. So when we think about dignified menstruation, it is really an umbrella term that is including menstrual products, infrastructure, clean water and hygiene. We are talking about the social, cultural, political, economical, and environmental. Next. And so the priority from us in Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation is that dignified menstruation has to be at the center of the menstrual movement. It is a protection of human rights, of women's rights, of health, of disability, of education. And it is something that with the use of dignified menstruation, we will be addressing the multidimensional issues with menstrual discrimination. Next. Perfect. And so a little bit on our International Dignified Menstruation Day, the relationship between gender-based violence, like reproductive injustice, beliefs, practices that discriminate our human right to bodily autonomy, like abortion bans and menstrual health, is so much more intertwined than people may think. Both gender-based violence and menstrual discriminations are human rights violations and public health issue because they prevent women, girls, queer individuals, trans men from fully participating in society. In addition, they cause humiliation, deprive individuals of personal liberty, and take away their agency. Furthermore, gender-based violence and menstrual discrimination is deeply rooted in the intersectionality of patriarchy, toxic masculinity, ableism, and classism. So with the celebration of International Dignified Menstruation Day on December 8th, as the 14th day of the 16 Days of Activism, which is United Nations campaign to end gender-based violence, without including menstrual discrimination, by the way. And that's why we celebrate International Dignified Menstruation Day. And as you saw earlier in our presentation, that we have celebrated 4 years of it, with the 5th year as this year in December 8, 2023. And this is a marking of the global human rights violation, as well as calling out human rights entities such as the UN, WHO, national governments, and NGOs to accept menstrual discrimination and violence as a human rights violation and to use dignified menstruation as the mechanism for dismantling menstrual discrimination. Next. Perfect.
Thank you so
now
much,
we'll have
Millie.
Sari take it away. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that great introduction to what dignified menstruation means. And hello, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. Today, I'm going to share how AHF is utilizing technology and leveraging our partnerships to better reach women and girls worldwide and getting access to HIV care, health, and also menstruation support. So before we jump in, for those who are not familiar with the work we do, AHF is the largest HIV care provider worldwide, and our mission is to provide cutting-edge medicine and advocacy regardless of ability to pay. And we also have over 1.7 million patients in our care across 45 countries and 5 bureaus. Next slide, please. So to share a little bit more about what we do, AHF provides testing, treatment, condoms, as well as advocating for human rights change across several different topics, including issues pertaining to women and girls. We put a lot of importance on women and girls because they are the most at-risk population for many of our countries outside the US, and the HIV epidemic is much higher among women, especially in Africa, Latin America, and Asia countries. So a lot of our advocacy globally is to support these women to thrive regardless of their HIV status and to overcome obstacles they're facing, including stigmas around HIV and menstruation. Next slide, please. Here's a glimpse into which countries AHF operates in across the globe. We're in 13 countries in Africa, as well as 13 in the Americas, 10 in Asia, and 9 in Europe. We have close to 900 healthcare centers and clinics globally, and I'm proud to share that in 2022, we distributed over 65 million condoms worldwide. Next slide. So let's jump into some of the initiatives AHF has started specifically for young women and girls empowerment and health. And our most notable initiative is our Girls Act program, which started about 7 years ago. And our mission with Girls Act is to support girls and young women to really stay healthy, thrive regardless of their HIV status, but to also prevent HIV and STI infections, making sure they're staying on treatment, reducing unplanned pregnancies, and to help girls stay in school. Next slide, please. So the reason we started our Girls Act program is because HIV disproportionately affects young women and girls who make up about 53% of all people living with HIV globally. And according to UNAIDS, about 850 women and girls are infected with HIV every day. So essentially, it's a very important advocacy area in our work to not just provide care, but to provide the resources and tools girls need to break the cycle, succeed, and to live a healthy life. And since our launch in 2016, our Girls Act program has grown to have chapters across 35 countries. And all of our girl-led groups focus on HIV and STI education, screening treatment, comprehensive sex education, self-esteem, leadership training. We also provide support for menstrual health management and so much more. Next slide, please. So here's a short video we'll play that really sums up our Girls Act program in 30 seconds.
School. Something has happened to this young girl. She's no longer the timid girl you knew. She's a focused girl who's concentrating in class. That gives us hope.
Thank you. Next slide. Great. So AHF also participates in several internationally recognized holidays every year, including World AIDS Day and International Condom Day, which is actually a holiday AHF first created, and it's gone on to become a globally recognized day. And we're also actively participating in International Women's Day, Day of the Girl Child, and Menstrual Health Day, where we really use these days as opportunities to educate the public about HIV in women and promote the importance of access to education, human rights, and addressing gender-based violence. And with each of the campaigns we do, we always make sure that our messaging is translated for audiences. On average, we translate to about 20 different languages, local languages across our 45 countries to really maximize our reach and our engagement. Next. So Menstrual Health Day is one of our newer globally acknowledged days we commemorate, and we started participating in 2021 after recognizing that out of the 1.8 billion people globally who menstruate, 500 million of those girls, women, transgender men, and non-binary people experience period poverty every year. And factors of that include the lack of access to sanitary products, clean facilities, and girls can miss up to 20% or more of their school year due to their monthly cycle, which widens the already unequal education gap between girls and boys. And also stigma is a significant driver of period poverty due to so many cultures viewing menstruation as shameful and will often exclude menstruators from community and religious activities because of this perception. Next slide. So since our launch in 2021, we have distributed 450,000 sanitary pads to 34 AHF operating countries every year to help girls stay in school and to combat that stigma that still exists today around menstruation. We've also hosted fashion shows, group discussions with gynecologists, and informative health seminars that collectively reach more than 11,000 people. And young men and boys also attended these events to show their support, which really reinforced creating that positive masculinity and reducing stigma. And this is the event in which we first were connected to the Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation. So shout out to the AHF Nepal team and Deepak for connecting us. Next slide. Moving on to social media, here's a look at our overall reach across all of our digital platforms. We're very active on Facebook as well as Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and we're also going to use TikTok more. And our combined audience globally is about 631,000. So we really try to utilize our social presence and digital marketing to really reach our key demographics. Next slide. So to dive in a little bit deeper on the topic of our session, why technology matters, one campaign I want to highlight is from International Women's Day 2021. We were at the height of the pandemic during this time where normally we would be hosting in-person commemorations, but for everyone's safety, this wasn't possible for that year. So what we did instead is we came up with a marketing campaign to spotlight our women staff from all of our bureaus, and we interviewed each of them, asking them to share their experience being a woman in leadership during the pandemic, what advice they have for young women, and also had them share some of the challenges they face being a woman in healthcare. We then used these interviews to create social media content and videos, and overall this campaign was very well received. It created a lot of engagement and conversations on all of our accounts. And similarly to what Radha shared, the pandemic really challenged us to think more creatively about how to spread the message and create engagement when we were restricted to just utilizing our digital platforms. Next. So circling back to how we were connected to Global South Coalition through our AHF Nepal team, as we were beginning our advocacy work around menstrual health, we recognized that developing partnerships with other NGOs and bureaucratic leaders was integral to our advocacy work to eliminate menstrual discrimination and also menstrual poverty. And our partnership with Global South Coalition has mutually benefited both our efforts in addressing these issues because both of those who menstruate and those who are HIV positive experience stigma and discrimination of some form. Next slide. We've hosted a series of events together this past year where we've had our Girls Act leaders, adolescents, activists, including the coalition's members from more than 60 countries, participate in these events. Some of our partnered activations include the launch of a video contest in October, asking for contestants to submit a video about why dignified menstruation matters to them. We've also partnered in several webinars together this past fall. And also along with the Radha Patel Foundation, together we've urged the UN General Assembly to declare December 8th as International Dignified Menstruation Day through our press release and our social media campaign. Next slide, please. And lastly, we've also launched a toolkit together defining what dignified menstruation really means and how it is so critically needed in order to break the cycle of discrimination and stigma. The toolkit is available, I believe, on Global South Coalition's website for downloading and sharing. It's a really great resource we collaborated on and outlines why we need to recognize December 8th as International Dignified Menstruation Day. So I encourage everyone to go check that out. It is so important to recognize that this work cannot be done alone, and we firmly believe that breaking these taboos and creating lasting change can only be achieved by all of us coming together to work towards breaking the stigma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Serene. We are so appreciative of AHF and the, the resource and the support that we have gotten and partnered with. We're excited to continue working together and to, continue to expand our reach, both, with our audience members as well as cross, and it's really exciting. So we would like to open up the session for a little dialogue from the audience. I see the first question here already, so I'll just answer that one really quickly. Cheryl Mayo said, is there a North America coalition for dignified menstruation? And yes, there is. So I am the director for Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation North America chapter. So Cheryl, please go ahead and email me and anyone else who is interested in this work and you are located in the North America or Latin America, then please email me at the email that I just dropped on the chat box. You can also take a look at our webpage and email us through there as well. Okay, so thank you so much. We love to partner with any and everybody, individuals and organizations, because like Serene said, this is so important to recognize that it cannot be accomplished alone. We need support. We need supporters, just like all of you who are here today. We need supporters in forms of financial support. We need supporters in terms of social media reach and everything in between. So thank you. So please feel free, anyone, to go ahead and share any feelings or thoughts or questions, concerns, comments that you have had throughout this session. If you, you can also write it on the chat if you would like. You can just raise your hand if you'd like, or just start talking if you'd like to. And while I let everyone's brain juices start flowing, we can take a look at some of the answers that were given earlier this session at how did you find out about menstruation and what did you think about it? So I'll just sort of go through those while we're letting you all think. So Nicole says that she was afraid and confused, definitely. We have Numa, 7 years old, was very shocked. Cheryl says, I heard a little bit about it in school, but it didn't really sink in. And then when I first got my period, I was scared and unprepared. So this was 55 years ago. Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. We have Shahina, who says, I did not realize what was happening. It was hushed away. I was left to cope alone. Wow. And just, and there are so many people who have liked those comments, letting us know that they have maybe experienced the same kind of situations. We have Caroline who says, I was afraid and confused, and information I was getting was overwhelming. So I think all of these things really point out the fact that we were a lot of confusion, right? A lot of fear, a lot of just not knowing what is actually happening. And that can be very scary for any human being. But I imagine that it's really, really scary for that little young menstruator who had just started their menarche and are now, with the lack of information, and they have these raging hormones and the mix up of different hormones, which are influencing their thoughts and their actions and behaviors without a fully supportive, non-judgmental group. So I think all of these testimonials from our audience members are really showing us how much silence there is and how much silence is taught and observed, and how much we, sustain the stigma and shame through the silence. Thank you, Deepak. Deepak says, keep on doing good work and expand the meaningful network for ensuring dignified menstruation sooner than later. Best wishes. Thank you so much, Deepak. Thank you for being part of the HF team and for collaborating with us and partnering with us. I think that we can continue to go miles and to reach different entities with partnerships and networking. And we want to take this moment to kind of talk to announce to our audience members that if you are a part of our organization or you're an individual person who would like to work in dignified menstruation, you can either email at dignifiedmenstruation2019@gmail.com, which is on the chat, or if you want to work specifically in the North America or Latin America, you can email my email, which is where I have also left, or join our Instagram, and there are many avenues to connect with us. Thank you so much, Sapna. We've dropped a lot of our links on the chat. Please follow us on Instagram. We host Menses Monday and Flow Friday talks. If any of you are interested in going on the talks with us, let us know. This is really an open participation. And with that, I really want to open it up for the audience. Any reactions, any comments, concerns, questions?
Hi, Nicole from Costa Rica, Dignified Menstruation chapter in Costa Rica. It was very, very, very informative, everything that was said. I feel like we just joined and I'm learning so much from you guys. I'm very, very, very grateful. I wanted to share a little bit about my experience with my menstruation. When I was about 13, 14. I felt like I was absolutely doomed. I was confused, I was afraid, but I could not understand how this happened to women every single month and how horrible. It was like a curse. Like I felt completely shocked, and that nobody really spoke about it. I was completely overwhelmed with the situation, and now it's so refreshing to see a movement where we can actually talk freely about these topics, and where not only is it's being voiced, but it's also something that can be empowering to women to actually feel like I can be part of something that is bigger than myself, right? And like and that it's not being shut down. It's the opposite. It's being voiced, it's being shared, it's being I'm just grateful and very, very and I feel powerful to be a woman now. I feel great. I feel it's great. Well, thank you. I gotta go. I have a little baby who's crying. Sorry.
Of course, please go ahead. Powerful human being. I know having babies, taking care of them, and that sort of thing reminds me. They say that menstrual blood is the only blood that is not born out of violence, yet it is the one that is most hated upon. And I always keep that quote in my mind, and that reminded me a lot of what Nicole said. It's the idea that it's all the silence, all the overwhelmingness, all the violence around menstruation, when it is truly the only blood that is not born out of violence. And Nicole, thank you for sharing that you are starting a Dignified Menstruation chapter in Costa Rica. It's our first one. Nicole is taking the bull by its horns. We really, admire Nicole, and we encourage every single one of you. If you have a little oomph in there saying, hey, I want to do work in this, I deserve this, and this space feels good, then please contact us. And we are there to support you. And this really changes lives. And Nicole pointed that out, was the idea that dignified menstruation, the idea that we have this inalienable human right, will really change your own personal life. I know it can be a lot of information. Okay, Aisha. Aisha says, what are some of the emerging trends or issues that organizations is currently monitoring or addressing? And how are you adapting to your strategies to respond in these changes? Excellent question. Does anyone from our team want to answer this? Again,
Yes.
she says letters. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Radha.
I just like to share, there is a book. I don't know whether you see me or not. It is available in online, Amazon and thuprite.com in Nepal, Amazon for globally. The Dignified Menstruation, a Practical Handbook. That book gives you tools, the strategies to monitoring the activities, whatever you have been doing around menstruation. If you are working right now for distributing of menstrual cups, this is the example. And whether this your project is aligning or contributing towards menstrual dignity or not, that you can find through by using these tools. So I encourage you to not only the ASA Thapa, to everyone who wanted to work more deeply around dignified menstruation as a tool for achieving gender equality or improving sexual and reproductive health, or climate action, or agriculture, gender equality in agriculture, or sports. This would be the best tool. And constantly we are working, and you can find some instruments, some indicators in our website. Under the section of the resource, you can find the materials which we developed. As I shared already, these materials may not perfect, but it will guide you to contribute towards the dignified menstruation. Thank you.
I can also speak to this question from AHS perspective. So I know we're called AIDS Healthcare Foundation, but first and foremost, we consider ourselves a health and human rights organization. So we're always adapting and emerging to address the needs. So our advocacy and our work around menstrual health really comes from that fact that it's an issue, and it's interconnected to not just HIV, but for all health and well-being. So some of the other emerging trends or issues that we're currently monitoring and addressing right now are monkeypox, TB, because we're finding that TB is becoming really rampant in a lot of our countries. And just this last year, we had a very big campaign on vaccinations for COVID-19 called Vaccinate Our World. So we're always tackling all different types of health issues. Our HIVs are first and foremost, but yeah, I think it's really important to address all different things that come up because they're all connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Serene. I loved your answer, and I think that it's so important as human and health and human rights organizations to continuously adapt to the new emerging issues, as well as sort of keeping in mind what are the root issues that are connecting the disparities that are coming from these issues, right? Example, the monkeypox, right? So looking at how anti-LGBTQ legislations and different social kind of adversaries are creating a disparity on who's getting vaccine, on who's getting infected, on what kind of messaging we're sending out about monkeypox, or any other kind of health issue. So I really appreciate that. Any other questions or comments, concerns? Perfect. We are just wrapping up. And so again, always welcome to reach out to us using our Facebook, our Instagram, our email, our webpage. We have Deepak. Did you want to say something? Don't want to miss out on you.
Yeah, thank you very much for organizing such a wonderful event. And as Sareen already highlighted, I would like to also add something that she already mentioned, but I would like to reiterate. And yes, many people understand us as a HIV organization. And despite our core work on this, we are heavily, the intensity and the frequency and the magnitude of our advocacy the activities is increasing, like COVAX, the BOW campaign, Global Public Health Convention, because during the pandemic also, this COVID pandemic, we realized that the world leaders were unable to address the issue. And WHO itself, being a technical agency, they failed to respond to the needs of the poor, for which they claim that they are working for every single human being in this planet. And that is why, despite different challenges, we are making efforts. And I think this issue, the dignified menstruation, also attracted us to link our ongoing menstrual health management issues. And love to get connected. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you so much. We totally agree. And, I love how bold you are in calling out these large entities that we know sometimes there's a lot of fear around. And we are right there with you, Deepak. We are there to question these entities and to point out what things are not being done and what we as the people deserve. And, it's really wonderful to see that. And I'm so excited that we have partnered up. And I think we'll continue to make some noise, because I see some really bold leaders like you and Deepak and Sareen really making some noise. So we're super excited. Thank you so much for sharing. Last minute, I'll give one more chance. Anybody want to hop in here? Okay, perfect.
Maybe I would like to add one more thing. Maybe
go ahead. We have a little bit of time.
Maybe we are very few people, few organizations with very few or little or no resources. Still, we can make a noise and fight against injustice. And yeah, let's continue our journey. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And working from zero funding ourselves, we totally are on board with that. So thank you again for the reminders. And we really hope that the audience gets to know a little bit about, HF as well as Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation. Please reach out to us using the email, Instagram, social media campaigns, and we will see you again in the next NGO CSW, but I hope that we see you sooner. Thank you so much, AHF. Thank you, audience members. Much love to everyone.
Thank you for
so
having
much.
us, Millie. Thank you.
Thank you.